And so we're in the middle of a series right now where we're continuing to walk through the Gospel of Mark, and we'll continue plowing forward. But where we're at right now is we're at a part in the Gospel of Mark where basically Jesus is confronted with three, probably 5 different questions. And every question that he is presented with is a question that, honestly, the people asking the question aren't really looking to know the answer, but really they're just trying to trap Jesus. They're just trying to get him. And the question that we're going to look at this morning is one really about ownership. And I was thinking about the concept of ownership, and for whatever reason, it made me think about, a few months ago in school, they had a unit in class where, they taught elementary kids about, owning and renting a house, where you live, which seems really appropriate. And so they were talking about that, the difference between owning and renting. And so we're sitting at the dinner table, and my kids are like, so Dad, do we own our house? And I was like, well, technically the bank owns our house, but we're paying it off. And so then they're like, okay, so then are we renting our house from the bank? And I was like, well, no, because we're paying it down, and so no. And then they're like, so eventually, Dad, when you're done and you pay off the house, you don't have to pay anything anymore, right? And then you're done paying for the house. And I was like, well, no, you still pay taxes on it, and you still have insurance, I think. And then they're like, well, so what happens if you don't pay them? And it's like, well, then someone will come and take your house. And if someone can just come and take your house, it's worth asking the question, is it ever really yours? And I think we all know the answer to that. And really, as you think about it, that's this kind of ownership. It's kind of clunky. What is it? How does that really work? And the question they asked Jesus this morning is a question about ownership. And really, what Jesus does in answering their question is he appeals to more of what I would say is ultimate ownership. And you see that here in Mark's Gospel in Mark chapter 12. And I'll set the scene here just to kind of remind us of where we are. And what's going on is it is Wednesday, and Jesus will be crucified on Friday. And so that's where we are in the timeline, that right now that Jesus is in the temple courts, basically just teaching and answering people's questions. And this is what happens in verse 13. It says, and they sent to him some of the Pharisees and some of the Herodians to trap him in his talk. Now, this is setting the scene here. So here you have, this is where it says they sent. A lot of people, who are they talking about? Who sent? Well, a lot of people think that who sent them were the people that asked Jesus the question that we looked at last week, which would have been the chief priests, the teachers of the law, the elders, that group of people. And I think it was them and then a little bit of a larger group that's called the Sanhedrin. And the Sanhedrin is the Jewish governing authority in that day, that they are the most important body of people in the nation of Israel. And they are the ones who sent this group to trap Jesus. And I think that's really interesting because you just get this sense of all these people that are really, really out to get him, particularly people who have lots of power. And it's interesting because as they send these people to Jesus to try to get him, the people that they send is very interesting because they're people who generally don't get along. That you see there, it says that they sent the Herodians and they sent the Pharisees. Now, the Herodians, they were theologically liberal, and politically their ties were to the nation of Rome, to the Roman authority. And then the Pharisees were theologically conservative, and their political ties were more towards the temple. That these are two groups of people that by and large, they hate each other. But the one thing that they can agree on, in spite of all of their differences, is the fact that we hate Jesus. And the funny thing is, they hate him for completely different reasons. That the Herodians, they hate Jesus because he's too conservative. And the Pharisees, they hate Jesus because he's too liberal. And it kind of puts Jesus in this place where if he is not offending you, it's probably because you're not listening to what he's saying. And so you have these two groups of people who don't really like each other, who are looking to get Jesus. And then you see that word. And it's really interesting, is that word trap. Okay, that the New Testament was written in Greek. And that word in Greek for trap, it's only used there in the New Testament. Anywhere else it's used in ancient Greek writings, it's always talking about the idea of violent pursuit. So, and really, it makes sense because that's exactly what they're doing. They're trying to kill him. They're going after him with one purpose, and it is ultimately to destroy Jesus. That you get the sense here that what they are doing is they're trying to prove that Jesus is a false teacher. And really, even the image that it's conveying there is one where they're hunting him. They're not using weapons yet, but they're hunting him with their words, hoping that they can get him to misspeak, and if he does, then they'll have everything that they need when it comes time to kill him in 2 days. And so that's the scene, and then here they come. And what they do is really funny because they really kind of do it like a sales tactic, right? Where you really butter someone up and then you kind of make the ask, okay? And that's what that's what they're doing here. Look at this. It says, and so they came to him, the Pharisees and the Herodians, and they said, "Teacher, we know that you are true and do not care about anyone's opinion. For you are not swayed by appearances, but truly teach the way of God." And this is their question. "Is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not? Should we pay them or should we not?" And this is like sales tactics, kind of like you butter them up, and then you make the ask. Maybe think of this really weird situation that happened when Joanne and I first got married. And I say this, and this is kind of embarrassing, but whatever. Like, you can judge me. But when we first got married, our house was decorated in more of like a cat motif, okay? Which, whatever. Yeah, laugh at me. Judge me. It's okay. And so there's a store we go to in Kansas City. It was in the Crown Plaza, and it was called Gatos. And it was this like real fancy cat store, okay? And I'm pretty sure Gatos is Spanish for cat. I don't want you to tell me if it is or it isn't. Okay, so we go into this store, and as we're walking in, they're like, "You guys are such a cute couple. We can just tell that you guys are in love." Which I was like, thanks. Like, I don't know what to say. Like, cool, thank you. And then they ask the question that really kind of like turned everything in a negative direction, where they look at us and they say, "So how many cats do you have?" Just kind of embarrassed that anyone would ever ask me that question, but I was, and then we're like, "None. We just like to decorate our house in cat-themed stuff." And that's when our lives changed for the better, I think. I mean, but they butter us up, and they try to, whatever, to get to this point so we can buy really expensive cat merch. But really, they didn't really think we were a cute couple. They didn't really care. They just wanted to spend our money. And as you think about it, that's what's going on here. They're trying, hey, we're going to butter up Jesus, and buttering him up, he's going to let his guard down, and then he's going to say something without thinking. And it's really interesting because if you look at what they say to Jesus, man, they say 5 things to him in basically a verse, and they don't mean any of it. I mean, if you go through it, it says that first they call him teacher. And there's no one in that group who thinks that Jesus is a teacher. But they're like, "Teacher." And then they say, "You are true." And what they're saying is you have integrity, you are trustworthy, but they don't trust him. Like, think of everything that they're doing. Like, they don't trust him. Then they say you don't care about anyone's opinion. And what they mean by that is that you are not concerned with special interests and prejudices. But I think it's so ironic that they would say that to him, because that's why they hate him. They hate him because he doesn't care what they say. He doesn't care that they're Pharisees. He doesn't care what they've gone through. And so they say that. It's all just flattery. And then they say that you're not swayed by appearances, meaning there's no favoritism, there's no partiality. Really saying that what they're saying, Jesus, you see through the masks that people put on. And it's funny because they literally are putting on a mask. It's all a facade, everything that they're saying. And they say, you speak the way of God, and they're saying you are God's spokesman, which we know they don't believe, because if they believed that he was God's spokesman, they wouldn't be trying to kill him. It's ironic. It's ironic because everything they say, they don't believe. Not only they don't believe, but everything they say is absolutely true. That is Jesus. Like, he's all of those things. He is all of those things. They are absolutely true. And not only are they completely true of Jesus, it's not true at all of the people who are asking the questions. It's amazing to me how blind that this group of people is to their own sin. And it shows us something about ourselves. We are really, really good at pointing out the sin in other people and completely missing it when it's right in front of us, even when there is no sin in the person in front of you. That's exactly what they did. And as this is happening, they're buttering him up, saying all these things that are completely true. And since they're true, he's not swayed. And they ask him a question that is very, very complicated. And it's really complicated. If you think about it, like last week, there was a question posed that Jesus posed to this group of people about John's baptism. And the religious people didn't answer the question because there was too much to lose either way if they answered it. And really, that is that type of question. I mean, if you think about it, right? None of us like taxes. I mean, even the story about, like, if we go back to my mortgage payment, there's probably like a sense in the room, right, where it's like, that just isn't right, man. And we, at least to some extent, view the government as legitimate. Like, the Romans and Jewish people, they did not view the Roman government as legitimate. And the word there for the tax is actually referring to a poll tax that every Jewish citizen, every Jewish person would have to pay to the Roman government. And it was instituted in about 63 AD, and it was something that was highly controversial for the Jewish people to ever have to pay. That there were several revolts simply because the Roman government imposed this tax on Jewish people. The most recent one was recorded by the historian Josephus, and it was in AD 6 by a man named Judas, not that one. And he basically had this revolt, and it was all about this tax. So you've got a portion of Judaism who are like, this is wrong, this is stupid, and we shouldn't have to pay it. And then also, one of the reasons why they have to pay is because they don't think that the Roman government's legitimate. Also, that paying the tax is borderline blasphemous. Let me show you. This is an image of the coin that they would have had to give. And what it says there around there, assuming that none of you read Greek, is it says, Tiberius Caesar Augustus, son of the divine Augustus. I mean, that's blasphemy. On the coin, it says that he's God. And so obviously Jewish people are going to be like, yeah, no, we're not going to do that. We don't want to do that. That's wrong. And so if Jesus says, so on the one hand, if he says, there's a group of people that are very motivated in the fact that Jesus would tell people that you don't have to pay the tax. But mind you, the Herodians are there when he asks the question. The Herodians, their allegiance is to Rome. And so if Jesus says don't pay the tax, if he says the tax is not legitimate, I mean, they have the authority to arrest him on the spot. So basically, he's in a corner where it's like, okay, do you want to offend your people or do you want to offend Rome? The choice is yours. And what Jesus does, he answers this question. And it shows us something about Jesus that's often overlooked. And it's that he's brilliant. They weren't able to trap him. Because what Jesus does in answering their question is he appeals to what I would say is ultimate authority. really giving an answer that no one can really argue with. Look at what he says. He says, "But knowing their hypocrisy, Jesus said to them, 'Why put me to the test?' In the Message it says, 'Why are you playing games with me? Bring me a denarius and let me look at it.' And they brought one. And Jesus said to them, 'Whose likeness and inscription is this?' And they said to him, 'Caesar's.' And Jesus answers their question. And he says, 'Render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's.' And they marveled at him." Such an interesting interaction, and it's really interesting on several levels. One, you've got Jesus, who's well aware of their hypocrisy. He's well aware of the fact that they want to kill him, and they will kill him. And he ends this thing with an opportunity for them to respond. Like, it's so gracious. He tells them how they can respond to him, because he wants them. And so you have that, and then you have just the irony of the whole thing. These people are asking Jesus a question about a denarius, and Jesus doesn't have one. But you know who has one? The people asking the question, which shows you they don't have a problem with it. The fact that they have one on them shows that they have no problem paying the tax. They're just trying to get Jesus to stir up the crowd. But Jesus, he responds in such a brilliant way, because they're looking to trap him, but they can't. Because he pulls out this coin and he's like, "Well, whose image is on the coin?" So, "This is Caesar's." And Jesus basically says, "Well, if his image is on it, just give it to him." Saying there's room. There's room to pay him his taxes. It's fine. But then he says, "Give to God what is God's." And so this whole idea, it's around image and ownership. And so on the coin is an image of Caesar, so you should give the thing that his image is to him. So what is he saying about giving to God what is God's? Well, it'd be a question of image. And whose image, like what is God's image on? It's on us. But if you go all the way back to Genesis chapter 1, verse 26, when God created the world, he created us. And this is what it says. God created man in his own image. When he says man, he's talking about mankind. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. So what Jesus is saying is he's saying, yeah, pay taxes to Caesar, but give God your life. He's saying, do the thing that the government thing, play the game, but what God is asking you for is far more than anything that the government, and you need to have ultimate allegiance to God. And that's what he's saying. And really, if you were to boil the whole text down, it all comes to that last verse where he says, "Give to Caesar what is Caesar's, and give to God what is his." And so what do you do with that? So there's this question. So what do you do with that? And really, there are two ways that I would say you respond to this text. One is that, like, with this in mind, is that you need to give respect to those who are in authority. And the principle of like authority goes far beyond government, okay? That if you look at Romans chapter 13, that it says that all authority that's over you is there because God put it there. So this could certainly apply to that. And it also is mentioned in 1 Peter. And so this idea of honoring those who are in authority, respecting those who are in authority, is something that is very scriptural. And I would just remind you, the Romans were not good. Like, they weren't. Literally, the Romans, like, are part of the reason why, like, the church struggled for several hundred years. You don't think Jesus would have been aware of that? And his response, when he's posed with this question, his response isn't revolt. His response is respect. And I love the fact that this text kind of fits here because there's no election coming, so you can't misinterpret what I'm saying to get by. I'm saying, whether we're talking about the governor or we're talking about the president, that you owe them some level of respect. That you should pray for them. That doesn't mean that you have to agree with everything they do. I'm not advocating for that at all. There are some things you absolutely should and you should disagree with. But when you disagree with people in authority, you should disagree with them in a way that you would want people to disagree with you. That is how you show respect to authority. But it's not just the government. There's also like all the authority structures that are in your life that God has put them there. Some of you are taking class, and you got a teacher, and they are just ridiculous. You need to respect them. You're in their class. You need to honor them. You need to not be talking about them behind their back. God has put the authority there that you owe them respect. You're there. You get pulled over on the side of the road. You're speeding. You're like, come on, it was only 11. No, there's a sense you got to show them respect, man. You should be kind to them. God's put them in authority there. You need to honor them. There's a sense in your work. You've got a boss that you hate. You got to honor it. God's put them there. That it is on you to respect and honor that person. That if you go in the break room and everyone is like talking about how this guy or this lady is the worst, you shouldn't entertain that conversation. You owe them respect. That all authority that's there is there because God put it there. Even thinking of stuff like some stores have just dumb rules, right? If you go to like indoor kids' playgrounds, right? They're all stupid, right? Like you owe those places, you owe them respect. You need to do what they say. That they're in authority, like you owe that to them to follow. Like there's this sense that you give them what's theirs. And what Jesus is speaking against here is these kind of these extremes that we kind of fall into, right? And he's saying like you got to be really careful. So like the answer to the government is not anarchy. He's like you should pay the tax. But the answer also to the government isn't make them God. And I think in our political climate that we live in currently, that there is this tendency to do that. And it doesn't matter what side of the aisle that you're on. Even as I say that, you're thinking probably of someone that needs to hear it. If you're thinking of someone that needs to hear it, I'm actually talking to you. And so, like, I mean, even just think of how far it's come. So I read this book by Chuck Klosterman on the 90s. It's really interesting. And he talks about the election in 2004, and where it was George W. Bush, and actually it was the one before that in 2000. It was George W. Bush and Al Gore. And there was this sense, okay? Literally people wrote this in this, like, the cover of articles online. Was basically, it doesn't matter who wins. Nothing is going to change anyways. Like that was the assumption going into that election. Okay? Could you imagine someone saying that today about one of our elections? Every single one is the most important one in the history of America. And what does it do? It fuels all this vitriol, this hatred, and all this like idolatry. And what Jesus is warning us against is be really careful not to put too much hope there. That's not the point. But there is a place that demands your hope, that demands your allegiance, that it's the place where you should place all of your trust, and it's God. Give the government, give them respect. But the other thing you're supposed to do is you're supposed to give God all of your life. That God is asking for so much more. That you are made in his image, and so he demands your life like Caesar demands the coin. And you have to be so careful with like phrases like give God all of your life. And the reason why is because they can just, like in these settings, they just fall into the realm of cliche. Like, what does it mean to give God all of your life? And I think there's a few things that it would work. One is I would say that when God has all of your life, your time is spent differently. That God isn't just something that you add on to the things that are important, but God is really the most important thing, and everything else is an add-on to him. That when you give God all of your life, that really frames how you make your decisions. That you shouldn't make a decision that you think wouldn't please him. That if he has all of your life, then you wouldn't do that. That when God has all of your life, you view your possessions differently. That there's this sense that because all of my life belongs to him, that means that everything that I have, the only reason why I have it is because he gave it to me. I like the way that someone said it in teaching team. They said that when God has all of your life, that you view everything as an expression of your faith. And really everything should be an expression of your faith. And so for us, that's the question, is like, okay, so does he have all of it? And if he doesn't, well, then the question is why? And it could be all kinds of things. Maybe there's some stuff that you're like, I just want to hold on to this behavior, and I know that really, in order for me to really give God all of my life, I'm going to have to let go of this thing. I would just remind you that if you're holding on, you're made in his image. And if you're made in his image, don't you think that he probably knows the best way for you to live? But sometimes what we do is we maybe you're like, oh, I know this needs to change, but we choose not to because we just don't think like, I just don't know that I'm ready. I mean, if you're made in his image, then I don't know that you'll ever be more ready than you always are, right? He made you in his image so that you could really give him every part of what you are. And there's all kinds of things that we can do to show God that all of our life belongs to him. You know, and one of the things I really like that New Life does is that regularly one of the practices that we like to do is we like to fast. And the reason why we fast, and there's all kinds of things you can do to show God that every part of your life belongs to him, but what fasting does is fasting is something that you don't have to do. That literally a fast is saying, I am going to say no to something that I can absolutely say yes to. But I'm going to say no because I love him. And we've done all kinds of fasts over the years, but one of the ones that we really thought we should do this year was we wanted to do Lent. And so what you'll notice is in the seat around you, there's a pen in the seat back in front of you, and in the seat that you're sitting on, there was probably one of these cards. And what it has here is it has our Easter theme is everything changed. And really what we want to challenge the church to do is to participate in Lent. And here's the cool thing about Lent, is that you can enter it at any level, okay? That maybe some of you really feel like God is pushing you, and so you should do something really big. Maybe some of you are kind of new to this thing, and so maybe do something that isn't super big. Last year we did it with our kids. Like, it's a really good thing that you do. And what I would like everyone to kind of ask ourselves, okay, so not only is it something that we give up, but what is something that over these next 40 days, and Lent starts on Wednesday, and it goes till Good Friday. And so over these 40 days, what is something that you want to see God do? What's a prayer request that you really are just like, that stirs your heart that you want to see? And so not only are you fasting during the season, giving something up, but you're also saying, I'm going to be intentional during this season to pray for this thing. We got some stuff at the church that we really would like you to pray for us too, and that's on the back. And then we also think it's good to read the Bible as part of your Lent fast. So we have a Bible reading plan for 40 days through the Gospel of Mark. It's pretty simple, but I don't think you can get enough of the Gospel of Mark. And these are things you can pray for us, and you can pray for yourself. And so what we're going to do is we're going to end this service, and I'm going to pray, and I'm going to pray that God would open our hearts. One, to say, like, God, what do you want me to fast? And not only, God, what do you want me to fast, but God, what do you want me to pray for? What's something in my life where you want me to take a concerted effort to say during the next 40 days, I'm going to pray for these things. And then as you think about whatever that thing is that you pray, that you're like, hey, I'm going to pray for that, what we would like to do is we'd like to pray with you as a church. And so on this little tag if you would just write what you're praying for the next 40 days, and what we'll do is we'll hang them up all over the auditorium, just as a reminder for us as a team, hey, these are some that we want to pray with you along these journeys. We believe that, man, prayer changes things, and there's something there, and this is a great way to give God every part of your life. So I'm going to pray. And just, it's an opportunity for you to just kind of be quiet and just reflect on what God is asking of you. And so let's pray. Father, we love you. And I pray, I think about this whole thing, and honestly, God, my prayer is that you would help us to really ask the question, what is it that you want me to give up? Maybe in this room there are people and there's things you're speaking to them that you want them to fast that feels maybe too much for them, and I just pray, God, that you would continue to nudge them. It's possible there are people in this room and the reality is they don't even have a relationship with you, and maybe for them it's like, I'm going to put my faith in Jesus, and I just pray, God, that they would come alive. I just pray in this room, not only would you help people to see what you want them to fast, but God, that you would also help them to see what you want to do. That you'd help them to see the miracles that you want to work in their lives and in their circumstances, and they would not just be thinking in terms of, God, what am I giving up? But that, God, they would also be thinking in terms of, what is it that he wants to do? And so, God, as we sit here and we reflect, I pray that you'd make us aware of what you want. God, we love you, we trust you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Jireh, you are enough. I will be content in every circumstance. Jireh, you are enough. Jireh, you are enough. Jireh, you are enough. I will be content in every circumstance. Jireh, you are enough. You're forever enough, always enough, more than enough. Forever enough, always enough, more than enough. I'm already loved, I'm already chosen. I know who I am, I know what you've spoken. I'm already loved, more than I could imagine. That is enough. Come on, would you stand this morning and sing this together? I'm already loved, I'm already chosen. I know who I am, I know what you've spoken. I'm already loved, more than I can imagine. That is enough. I'm already loved, I'm already loved, I'm already chosen, I'm already chosen. I know who I am, I know what you've spoken. I'm already loved, more than I can imagine. And that is enough. And Jireh, you are enough. Jireh, you are enough. I will be content in every circumstance. Jireh, you are enough.
Thanks so much for checking us out online. I just hope that whatever you saw, that it was a blessing and an encouragement to your life.
And if you'd like to give today, there are 2 ways you can do so. You can text your amount to 84321, or you can go to giving.nlspringfield.com and give that way. And if you'd like to join us in person, we'd love to have you. Our service times are at 8, 9:30, and 11.
And if you're new, on the first Sunday of every single month, we have an event called Party with the Pastors, which is a great way for you to get to know us, and it's a great way for us to get to know you. So we look forward to seeing you there.